Well, I might, but if we're talking about it making some difference, I might question how much, right? Because then
that's what I'm asking.
To ask if it's the sort of amount that I would care enough about.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to get clear on. Just is it the case that you believe there's no impact, or there's like some incredibly small impact, like maybe it's like just this like social signaling impact or something. Like obviously,
well, I assume you're building the case so that there would be some impact, even if small.
No, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, it's gonna be small. It's gonna be the portion of like the portion of people consuming. I'm guessing that like maybe. So maybe you're consuming about the global average, because I'm sure that like you live in the U.S., so that's going to be something that raises my credence towards you consuming more than the average. I
don't live in the U.S., but
you live in Canada, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so probably more than the global average for that reason, but also less because of the fact that you're going to be thinking more about the issue and just like you probably care more about your health or something like those. Do you think you consume like about the average amount of meat products?
Globally, I'm not sure. Maybe, okay. But let's just go with that.
Sure. Okay. Assuming you're consuming about the average amount of meat products, the rest of the globe, we could just take whatever the risk we're going to assess our species of dying off of, or the risk of even like large scale pandemic. We could take whatever the risk of that is, divided by the number of people who currently exist. And that's about the contribution that you're going to have to the problem. So do you think that's a fair estimate?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So given pandemic risks in particular, seems like the super forecaster groups put like zoonotic pandemics pretty high. Obviously, some portion of those are going to be caused by like non-factory farms, but the vast majority of antibiotic usage ends up coming from CAFOs, right?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not going to dispute any of this. I'm just going to make the point that I sort of hinted at already, which is that the difference I'm going to make, or would expect to make, is not going to be a difference that I really care that much about.
Well, I mean, I think that if we start thinking about it, if we remove it from the context of this like thing we're already kind of committed to, and start putting it into other scenarios, the difference is significant enough to kind of be worth it. So, do you think it's like about, if it was the case that like something would kill, like at a 10% chance of killing 10 million people, that's about as bad as a 100% chance of killing a million people.
So 10% chance of killing 10 million versus a 100% chance of killing 1 million?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in terms of the number of expected deaths, it's the same. I might not care equally about those cases, though.
That's what I'm trying. I'm just trying to figure out what your concerns lie with. Like, the number of expected deaths is this, but I'm asking, what do you care more about? Or is it the case you care approximately the same? It doesn't have to be exact.
Between those two cases? Mm-hmm. Well, I think I would find the 100% chance of a million people more worrisome.
100%. You'd find it somewhat more, or do you find it significantly more issuesome?
Well, somewhat more. I mean, both of them are very worrisome to me.
Okay. Wait, sorry. Both of them are very what to you?
Worrisome.
Worrisome. Okay, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, if both of those sound pretty worrisome, what about a 1% chance of killing 100 million? Would that still be pretty worrisome?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly worrisome. Relative to everyday things, it's quite worrisome, but, it's somewhat less than the other two, I think.
Yeah, I'd probably agree that, like, intuitively it seems less worrisome, but still pretty worrisome. Chrome, I guess we could probably do this a couple more times and see if it's still, like, in the realm of worrisome. And if we do, then I think we might just get to a number where it's just your contribution is more than likely enough to be to compel you off of it, just given the math, because it might just be like an empirical thing that can move you.
Right, but then we're not approaching a relevant case, right? It's not like we're approaching. It's not like the original case was. It's a 0.0001% chance of killing everybody. That's not what the example was.
No, it is. So there's it is that is the argument. So there's like 100 trillion people that'll probably live in the future, right? At least if we just assume that 800,000 years is like the point where humanity would die off if we don't die off due to pandemic. But if that's an assumption you're willing to grant, which I think is a pretty low assumption, I think 800,000 is like really short. That means just like assuming that like there's a 10, assuming there's like maybe 10 billion carrying capacity for the Earth, assuming there is the average person's life stagnates at like 80, assuming all of these like really kind of bleak expectations. It's still the case we get like 100 trillion people existing until that 800,000 years period. And it seems like those people not being able to exist, even if you're like a relatively small part of that, like even like an 0.0000, I don't know, call it like 10 to the power of -12 or something.
Sure, 100 billion or whatever.
Okay, Rose.
Yeah. Even if it's like this is the percentage contribution, I'm sure it'd be the kind of thing where you're like, yeah, I'd probably not want to be doing that. Is that like a rough estimate of your view or your stance?
No, it's not at all. I wouldn't have.
Okay.
So there's actually there's sort of two things really going on here. One is that I wouldn't say that I wouldn't decide not to do that on that basis that I could be part of that 1 in a billion contribution towards that. Unless of course I thought that there was a decent chance that 1 in a billion is really going to make the difference, right, between it happening and not happening. However, you might point out, well, but even there's some small chance of that, so maybe you would, on that basis, decide to do it. And that on its own wouldn't be enough, but I think there's a further problem, which is that even if I were not to do it, and this is a point that comes up in some of these, actually came up in a slightly different context regarding just environmental damage. But it can be applied here too. Actually, I asked the author of the paper about this, and he said the same thing, which is that I would likely expect that whatever damage that I would do, that I did in fact do by refraining, would have been realized, seconds later by the ongoing consumption of other people. Right. So in other words, you can think of as me my refraining doesn't prevent it from happening; it just prevents it from happening a few seconds earlier, right? And then you might ask, well, okay, do I care about it happening a few seconds later? And I might not care that much, right?
Well, I don't think there's good empirical reason to believe this is going to happen. The difference here being just a few seconds earlier or something along those lines. It's when it comes
I think there is.
Really?
Yeah. So consider like other cases, whether it be polluting the atmosphere, consuming some meat products, whatever you think that is going to contribute to these adverse effects or might contribute to them. If you ask how much of that was produced, or how much was, pollution was produced, or how many animals were consumed or killed, right? And then we suppose that on some occasion, I don't pollute, or I don't consume, or I don't do whatever we think might lead to these adverse effects. We might then ask, how much time is going to elapse before the amount that would have been produced had I done that, how much until that is produced or consumed, and so on. And it's going to be on the scale of tiny fractions of a second, because this stuff is going up all the time, right? So like the difference between, say, exactly this amount of level of pollution in the atmosphere had I done it versus this amount of level in the atmosphere had I not done it is going to be on the scale of fractions of seconds. And you might think that, okay, maybe I staved off some of these expected adverse effects by fractions of seconds, but that might not be something that I care that much about. In fact, it isn't.
No, I don't think there's any good reason to think it's staving off these things by fractions of seconds. I'm still trying to figure out what the empirical argument for that was. The issue ends up being it doesn't seem true. It seems like the issue ends up being when it comes to things like pandemic risk. I don't see I'm not seeing exactly why things like large scale pandemic are these kind of things where it's like some time delay thing. It seems like instead it's like a matter of how many risks you're taking, and eventually you take enough of the risk, and the chance goes up, such that you have a large-scale zoonotic pandemic. You have enough, and the risks end up being things like human exposure to animals kept in really cramped condition who are doped up on the same kind of antibiotics that humans are using. Like that seems to be one of the large contributory factors. Doesn't seem like it to be like a second. It seems like it's more like
still the same. That's still the same sort of the same. I'm going to say the same things about that sort of case. So I think I assume you're talking about cases where disease is spread from like farmed animals or animals in the agricultural system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then like, well, but by having more animals or by continuing to farm them and so on, there's a greater risk, and interacting with them is a greater risk of eventually leading to some sort of terrible pandemic or something. And then you might think, okay, but like, let me say something about how, well, if I consume fewer, and so maybe that at least at some point leads to fewer animals being killed, right? Or at least farmed for this purpose. You might say, well, that's fewer risk taken, so it's at least slightly less chance of such a pandemic from obtaining. And what I'm saying is that this, well, aside from the first point, which is that the difference is not one that I care enough about in order to take that course of action, the second point I'm raising still applies here, right? Because the number of risks taken is still going to add up to the same number it would have been had I done that action just fractions of seconds later, right?
No, so that's not true. Well, yeah,
it is because
you're not being because
within
Well, the issue is it doesn't end up being fractions of seconds later. It ends up being, I mean, we're under the assumption that you're eating about the average number of animals. The average number of animals yearly. I mean, depending on what kind of animals you're eating, maybe you eat more chicken or something than the average person does, in which case it's even more.
Yeah, it's mostly chicken.
Yeah, okay. In that case, it's like really bad on antibiotic risk. So you're probably doing even more harm than the average person, given that you mostly eat chicken. With the chickens in particular, they're packed together dense. You're probably eating. I'd be, if it's the case, like chickens are a thing that you're eating about equivalently to the amount of calories the average person is getting to eat. Then you're eating. You're eating
Detroyer now. Let's go.
200. Okay. Good. You're eating like 200, 300 chickens every year, which is quite a lot.
A year? 300 seems high, but I'm not sure.
Well, might seem high.
Yeah,
it might seem high, but maybe it's the case that it's like
I don't think I'm eating more than like a chicken or two on average, like a week. So
on average, a week?
Yeah.
Okay. If you're eating more than
the amount consumed. Yeah.
If you're eating like 2 chickens a week or something, that ends up being about 100 a year. Still quite a lot. So,
yes.
But 100 chickens, and that probably means you're eating a lot less, you're consuming a lot less meat than the average person is.
I don't eat a lot of pork or really actually all that much beef. I haven't had steak in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite a lot. It's quite a lot less. You're only consuming like 2 chickens per week. Maybe you're supplementing like other. Oh yeah, okay. Well, it depends on if it's farm fish. If it's farm fish, that's probably pretty issues. If it's, I don't care.
Yeah, mostly farm fish because that's what's easy to get around here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's gonna be pretty bad as well. On the pandemic risk. So all of these, like it seems like probably disproportionately.
Just suppose whatever you want about my average consumption of various animal meat products. Like, what's the point about the pandemic thing? Because I don't see how my second point.
Yeah, the point is that now it's not a matter of seconds that you're contributing. Now it's a matter of a very, very large portion of time between pandemics happening, which is something you're going to be responsible for in particular. So if we take a look at distances between large-scale zoonotic pandemics that come from CAFOs, right? The distances here end up being, if we divide them by like if we divide them by something like 7 billion, which is just to assume that you're having like, equal impact to the average, which is clearly not true. If instead, right, if we just go ahead and divide it by like that 7 billion number, we still the amount of time there ends up being not a number of seconds. It ends up being a lot longer than that.
So I wonder how much longer that would be, but I still think it is on the scale of seconds. So unless you're adding up, say, all of my consumption across my lifetime. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, I would, no. Or the even like the consumption you will have in the future is kind of what's more important, which is going to be more than across your lifetime.
Let's just take for granted that whatever I had in the past. Yeah, so whatever I have in the future, in the next, whatever, however long I live, and I'm consuming food. Right, so that's, presumably, if we're considering the case where I continue roughly the same sort of meat consumption that I have been versus, little or none at all, I would grant that that's a bigger difference. I'm not.
Wait. What's the time scale? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
But I still think the time scale is going to be on the scale of. So there was something I wanted to add, but it would take a minute to sort of explain. But in terms of just the number of animals consumed, the difference in the time scale here is still going to be on the order of seconds, right? Because how many? I mean, that's quite trivial, right? Because how many? Suppose I were to eat, I don't know. This is quite high, but like 100,000 different animals over the course of the remainder of my life. Well, how many animals are killed? How long does it take globally for us to get through 100,000 animals on the scale of seconds, right? And so, like, now there's a few things you could say in response to this. One is to say that, okay, but we might still care about that difference in seconds, or this not exactly what we're caring about. We're caring about the lives of the animals, and then we're making a non kind of environmental or health related assessment, which we're trying to discuss as well. Another thing another point that you might make is that the difference here is not just about the number of animals, but more, it might make a difference that is near, like, there might be certain risks. Like, suppose that I continue to buy products from similar sort of places, and I don't know, some farm or something, like factory farm, suppose. I'm not sure that, in fact, or maybe probably some of it isn't sure. And you might think that. Sorry, some of what isn't? That some of the meat products I buy are produced from certain factory farms. Okay, so you might think you'd be shocked if it wasn't the majority. Yeah, I assume it is. Well, I know it is for fish in general, and like I know most of the meat is from Ontario. I don't know. I don't think they're huge factory farms, but there's probably still factory farms. Whatever. I mean, if you're eating, if you're eating 100,000, if you're eating like 100,000 per year, that ends up being. I was averaging that over. Over life. But I don't know. That's probably that ends up estimated probably, but that ends up being like wildly huge. That ends up being so it's about 70 billion animals per year. So that means if that was in a year, it would be like 1 in 70,000. Instead, if you want to just like multiply that 70,000 by, I'm guessing maybe you'll live for, I have no idea how old you are, maybe another 50 years, right? Just wild assumptions. Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Assuming that, then it ends up being like 1 in 3 million of the problem comes from you in particular, which ends up being really, 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 really big. Obviously, when it comes to pandemic risks, these are like even non-existential pandemic risks have already been hugely damaging, right? Take COVID, for example. This is an example of like one that it's zoonotic, but it's not going to be from kappa, so at least we don't think so.
Yeah. So, well, we could return to the. So I was just going to make a point about something that you might say on the pandemic risk stuff. It's sort of a tricky point to express, but whatever. Which is that the risks might not be just about the number of animals consumed or farmed or whatever, but maybe something to do with the rate or even on the level of individual factory farms, how many are being, like, what's that sort of throughput in those farms? And even if, so we might not just be caring about the amount of time it takes to reach a certain number consumed, because it might take a few seconds longer had I not done it. But about at any given moment, what sort of throughput overall, or in particular factory farms, because that might incur an additional risk than just being open for another few seconds. are operating for another few seconds. So you might say that there's some difference there. I hope that's a bit clear. But
well, obviously the difference is going to be obviously the difference is gonna have a lot to do with the rates. So I mean, one of the big issues is not even just so much the fact that a certain amount is being killed, but like you said, the amount that are killed within a certain time span, and that's because as there's more demand, you have these things being crammed into smaller and smaller spaces. You have like and obviously as you have them crammed into smaller and smaller spaces, you have like more chances for disease, from one to the other. You have more chances you have more chances or more reasons for these factory farms to go about increasing the degree to which antibiotics are used. All of these end up being not just like a total count, but like an amount issue in terms of a time span.
Right. Yeah. So this is why I brought this up, which is that this is a potential response to what I was saying about if we're just looking at the raw numbers, we would have reached that anyway a few seconds later or something like that. Where we're concerned with more than just the numbers reached, right? We're concerned with things like throughput and how many are being in a factory farm or being processed at a particular time, which is additional risk, right? It's related obviously to total number, but it's an additional risk. And that's a fair point, and it's something that can be discussed further. But ultimately, I'm going to say similar sorts of things, right? When I brought up my first point, which is that the difference is not one that I care significantly about, even in this case, right?
Mm-hmm. So wait, you said you say similar kinds of things?
Yeah. Well, if you recall.
And stop.
Your audio cut out. I'm unable to hear you. I'm not sure if that's
Well, if you recall earlier, I brought up two kind of general points about the pandemic related kind of those style of concerns that you were raising. One being that, well, the second one being the one we were just kind of discussing about, well, we're talking about difference on timescale of seconds or fractions, whatever. And then the first one being that the difference in risk sort of my acting versus not acting in these ways is not a difference that I care significantly about, or at least care enough to adjust my action in that way. And I'm just going to extend that to this worry regarding this particular risk, right? That, having maybe my consuming animal products in this way would lead to slightly more animals being processed at particular factory farms or whatever, something like that.
So, how many expected lives not lived? About, and like obviously it's going to scale for you. But what do you think the approximate number is in terms of expected lives not lived that you would personally have to be stopping for you to care?
Of just lives in general, or I'm talking about like animals, like, do you have anything in particular in mind? Or
no, I mean, I'm talking human lives. Yeah, I'm talking human lives.
Oh, human lives. Sorry, are you still tying this just to the pandemic thing?
Yes.
Sorry. So the question is, how many? This is a kind of weirdly phrased question, but how many lives not lived?
No, that's not.
Would that number have to be for me to care about it, or?
Yeah. What is the approximate expected lives gone not lived that would make you start caring? Like how many? Like if I asked how many expected deaths there are, like what if like how many expected future lives that don't get to be lived? Like what kind of approximate number would you throw out there? Is like this is the line where I think I might start caring.
I'm still trying to understand the example, because of course I care about whether some people live or not. I mean, so I don't. Are you still tying whether I decide to consume animal products, or I'm not quite understanding the example?
Yeah, I am. I'm talking. I'm talking to that. I'm just asking, like, if I took the amount you're contributing, right? Whatever your percentage of the contribution is, to some issue, right? And that issue was going to kill X number of people, then I multiply the percentage through which you contribute to it by the number of people killed. What's the number I'd have to get on the other side of that equation for you to start caring?
Well, I sort of reject the question, right? Because it's not that I don't care, right? But presumably, I assume you mean to ask something like, for me to care enough so as to change my course of action, something like that.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, to compel you. not to participate in the problem?
I'm not sure, right? Because in a way, the question, it's sort of like, if a pandemic were to occur and like wipe out the species, or maybe even all life on Earth, whatever, how many lives has that not lived? Like, that's potentially infinitely many.
I don't think it's likely to be infinite.
Yeah, no, neither do I. But when I say potentially infinite, I mean like it could be almost arbitrarily large, right? It's like
It'd be quite big.
the humans could start populating the galaxy. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So so if you're asking like, suppose I were to know that if such a pandemic were not to occur, that humans would start populating the galaxy in this sort of way, would that be enough for me to change my course of action? And then it doesn't. I guess I would somewhat prefer that outcome to one where there's they're less advanced. Their people aren't kind of populating the galaxy in that way. But of course, the scenarios I'm going to be comparing are what I expect to obtain. I'm just going to plug it into a sort of decision matrix in a sort of normal way. Well, at least when pressed to think about it more rigorously, because I don't always do this. So let's see, I'd be comparing acting this way versus not acting. If I think that there's, I don't know. I'm gonna probably end up saying all the same things. So I'm not sure that there's. I mean, I suppose maybe there's some way to make the quote unquote expected reward of not there not being a pandemic of this sort so great that the minuscule difference in my expectation that I would obtain given my action versus my expectation that I wouldn't obtain were not to do it would be swamped. But I don't have precise kind of credences regarding this that I could just kind of spit out a number or something like that.
Well, I'll throw some numbers at you, and you tell me if they're above or below your line of caring. Let's imagine you have a 1 in 200 billion. There's like you're a 1 in 200 billion part of a problem which has a 5% chance of killing off humanity. What about that? Is that the kind of thing where you where now you care? Wait,
but hang on. But this, I want to be clear. When you say there's 1/2 billionth of the contribution, 1/200 billionth of the of the cause of their problem, I'm not understanding that as if I do act in that way, there's a 1 in 200 billionth chance that the pandemic will occur, and if I don't act in that way,
I'll clarify. What I'm saying is we have this 5% number, and it would go down 1/500 billionth of that number. We'd lose 1/200 billionth of that number. It would go from 5 to 4.99 at something, right?
And that's the likelihood of a pandemic of this sort?
Yeah, that's the change in pandemic risk.
No, but the 5% was the original.
Yeah, the 5% is the original, with your contribution. The 4 point something is the likelihood afterwards. The 4.99 something.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And then so that's still going to be kind of not relevantly different from the first case that I responded to, where we're not care enough about that difference.
Okay. You wouldn't care about a what about a 1 in 7 billion? You wouldn't care about that?
Again, I would care about it. Right? The question is, would I care enough about it?
That's what I mean. When I say would you care about this? I'm using that as shorthand. Would you care about this to a sufficient extent that you would change your position or change your behaviors?
Yeah. Yeah, and we're just leaving this aside the issue. This is the likelihood that obtains. It's at some point in the future. Leaving aside the timescale concern things. 1 in 7. There's a 1 in 7 billion decrease in the
Yep.
likelihood that pandemic would occur if you were taxed in that way. Yeah, that would not be enough for me.
That wouldn't be enough. Damn.
No, not close. I feel like if you started saying things on the scale of, thousands or something like that, that would start to move me. But millions or billions is like it's not.
Damn. So, would you have any? I guess maybe the different route. So that's just it's a really strange view. I guess it might just be the case that the empirics don't bear out where you'd care. Care enough such that you would change your CSE. You know what the.
I'll be honest. Even saying thousands is still even a bit. That might be even too small. But I'll just go with that. That's fine.
Like if I thought I was there was like a 5% chance of something with me the 5% chance of killing off all of humanity with me participating in it, and like it was a 1 in 10,000 reduction at 5%. Like as it goes from like 4 points, the point, all right, 4.99 something.
Sure.
That would be enough to fucking compel me off. But I guess we just have different views here.
Yeah, I feel like that's around where it would be for me. If it's 1 in 1,000, I feel like
I said 10,000.
That's around where I would. Sorry, 1 in 10,000. Yeah. Okay, that's a bit more gray, but
yeah, for me that still seems
somewhere.
I don't know.
Somewhere in that order is probably where I'd start to switch.
Yeah, that's just it's not. I don't think there's going to be a way to bridge the gap. I just have a widely different stance. But maybe there are other routes we could figure out. Is there anything about the treatment instead of factory farms that makes you feel bad knowing that you're causing it?
Yeah, to some degree. Yeah. I would prefer that would be improved.
Yeah. And it probably
we're going to get to a different similar point though, because I'm just going to end up saying more or less the same sort of things, but applied to this case, right?
Well, I don't think you could say that one because you're 100% of the contribution in this case. You're like entirely your fault, not like it's your fault plus some other people's fault that all participates together. It's like humanity risking thing. It's just like you're directly paying somebody to do a thing, which is something you think is like you'd prefer not happen. Yeah, like I think it's maybe easy to like push it out of your mind.
I understand what you're saying, but it's still the details are different in that way. But the same sort of reply is I'm going to make, which is that the difference that would in the amount of or severity of animal suffering were to act or not act in this way, and this is just on the first point, is not a difference that I would care sufficiently about. And the second point would also be relevant here too. Now you might recall the rejoinder I said earlier regarding what might be said against that second point, and I'm going to say similar things in response to that. I could spell out the responses that we're giving, but it's just a matter of repetition at this point.
Yeah, it's not sufficient such that you care. That seems like that seems strange to me. It seems like what's more like, and you can tell me if this sounds likely to you or not, but it's not like you wouldn't care if it was more present in your mind, but instead it's just not very present in your mind when you make the purchasing decision. Right? It's not the kind of thing where you immediately think about this. If it was, you might be like less appetized to pick up the thing of chicken.
Well, I've seen the videos and so on, and the Dominion and whatever. I've seen a few of the different things that beacons have asked me to watch, and it's true. I don't normally think about those when I'm considering, what to buy at the grocery store or what to eat tonight, and where to be thinking about those things actively when making those decisions. You're probably right that it would at least somewhat affect my decision. I don't think it would significantly affect it, but that is right. Those things, they're just kind of those emotional effects that might happen on me when making those choices.
You don't think if it was the case that you actively were thinking in the moment about the fact that every time you purchase one of these things, there's like along with it come a bunch of little baby chicks being like ended up in a macerator, or like these things being like walking ankle deep in their own shit. That wouldn't make you maybe wait until you're in the vegan food section of Walmart before you pick up some stuff to put in your buggy? That wouldn't change that behavior at all?
No. So, but no, it wouldn't, because part of the reason why it wouldn't is that it's not like I'm deciding between that occurring and not occurring, right? Because
Yeah, you are.
it's occurring regardless, right?
That's not
what I
true.
would be deciding, yes, it is. What I would be deciding is perhaps the number, or like the amount, or rate, or I would be contributing towards that, right?
Yeah, that means that means an instance. That means that there's an instance that doesn't happen. You've chosen that. Well, there's an instance which occurred, which you chose to allow to occur. You caused that to happen.
Yes, that's right. But the example, the kind of picture you gave was regarding these whole groups of them, or
Well, yeah, a group of male chicks being blended up in master. That's going to happen per chicken.
Right. That's fine. Right. But what I was saying was that, as I'm picturing that, when making these grocery choices, I wouldn't feel like, and it would be incorrect for me to feel like I'm deciding between that scenario occurring and not occurring. We might be deciding effectively, so it's sort of eventually between, say, one or a few or whatever.
If you're deciding effectively, then it sounds like that's a type of deciding. You're effectively deciding.
Yeah.
Then you are deciding.
Yes, but I was trying to make clear what I was deciding between. Right. I'm not deciding between, say, large populations of them going through this process. At least in any individual choice, of course. In effect, I would be deciding that if I were to change all of my feature choices, right? And that's another thing we could discuss, although we already kind of did, in a different context. I was just making clear on what the choice is between. And in this case, the choice between not consuming an animal product on this occasion and, say, some one or small number of animals not being farmed is a choice that I'm fine to make in the in the first way. That is to consume an animal product on that occasion, because it's not a difference that I care that much about. Of course, I do care somewhat about it, just not enough in that,
So, you don't think it's... Sorry, give me a second here. You don't think it's the case that you would care that much about... I mean, so it seems like the original dispute was on if you're deciding or not, and now it seems like you are in fact deciding on not individual, but hold on really quick, not on individual, but on group, right? You are deciding on. It's the case that these plethora, these large little groups of those baby chicks that you see blended up in the masticator, those are happening not on the scale of a one per chicken or something like those. Like those are happening in those little groups, in those little groups per chicken groups, right? It is these groups of individuals, and it's even if it was the case that you imagine just one dog being beaten to death, just one pig being beaten to death, I think it's the case that would be sufficient, knowing that you have caused one pig to be beaten to death. That would be sufficient to make you not want to cause that to happen. Maybe it doesn't though. Maybe it's the case that you just don't care.
No, well, I thought it was clear on this. It doesn't. But just to be, I mean, in general, just to be clear on something. When I was saying I wasn't disputing that I'm effectively making a choice here that has, not immediately effects regarding how many animals are found, but we can sort of treat it as if it does, because I understand the points that people make about this, and because it's sort of across 4-year timescales it does. I was just disputing what the choice is between, right? At least on a particular occasion of
the choices between whatever. Yeah, the choices between that chicken living a life that has to be ankle deep in its own shit, and then a bunch of baby chicks being blended into macerator. Right, that's the choice, right? That and it not happen.
That's right. Yeah, so that chicken, or maybe some chicks. I'm not sure what the if we would expect more chicks to be consumed that way if I eat one more chicken, but in addition to the one chicken we might expect to be farmed in addition to what otherwise might have been farmed. But whatever, that's an empirical question. If it's just that one chicken, or maybe there's a few others that you might expect to be farmed as well, maybe to meet higher expected demand. Or
they don't get farmed, they just get blended up in a master because they're not going to be egg laying, and oftentimes these the not egg laying chickens here are it's not the case. There's good reason to keep these around, like the ones that lay eggs. Obviously, also give you eggs.
Yeah, but all I was pointing out was that do we expect more chicks to be killed in that way? So suppose I eat, I don't know, I buy a rotisserie chicken, one rotisserie chicken. Do we expect more? I get the point of we expect more or less one more chicken to be farmed than had I not done that on average. Are we expecting also more chicks to be killed in that way that you're describing? Apart from the chance that, if we were to farm one more chicken, there's some chance that it would grow up deformed or something, so it would have been would have been born deformed or something, so it would have been one of the ones that we throw in there. This is just a sort of empirical question, but I just don't see how we're getting from, I decided to eat a chicken for dinner tonight to, now we're expecting, this is a choice between, say that chicken not being farmed and all these chicks not dying in this Detroyer or whatever, rather than just a choice between that one chicken not being farmed and that one chicken being farmed.
It's going to be more than just that one chicken, because the male chicks are produced in tandem with that one. The male chicks get produced in tandem because obviously, like you have like a new, when you make new chickens, half of them end up being male. And if a chicken's male at birth, it's not the case you need that many around. You don't need like a large group of male chickens. You can just take the vast majority of them, blend them up at a mass rate. Now, if it's the case that there's less, there's less demand for chickens, you get less chickens being produced. Less chickens being produced means you have to there are less male chickens that you blend up at a mass rate.
Right. So this is kind of
they're like a byproduct of the.
This is kind of along the lines of what I was thinking. Just the numbers would be the empirical thing that I'm not sure about, which is that suppose you're a factory farm, you have to produce, you have to farm one more adult chicken, right? So how many more chickens would you have to expect to have in order to get that result? And it's going to be more than one. It might not be more than two, but it's, or it might be less than two, but it's more than one because there's some chance that the next chicken attached is a male one that you don't need, or something is deformed in some way or whatever, otherwise doesn't reach it to adulthood. They expect the number of additional chickens from just needing one more adult chicken might be more than one. But I don't think numbers are going to be on the scale of, large groups of them just for needing one or more additional male chicken, if that makes sense, or adult chicken if female, whatever. So the difference in this is an empirical question doesn't really make that much of a difference to me, unless it turns out that it's we're talking on the scale of thousands or something to make one more or something like that.
Yeah. So if you just imagine every time that you're picking up, I don't know what kind of chicken do you like? Breast, or what part of the chicken do you eat?
I'll eat any part of the chicken. In fact, often what I'll do is I'll just get a whole chicken. It's more kind of an efficient way to do it. It's cost efficient, and also it's more. I think it's probably more environmentally friendly or something like that than to get, say, 20 drumsticks or something rather than one chicken.
And if you were to, you think of it while you were in the store picking up that particular whole chicken, you back of your mind the entire time had the idea that chicken, that single individual chicken, even just all the ones that get blended up the mass rate, just that individual chicken had to live ankle deep in its own feces, was kind of miserable, probably had warts and other such deformities and other such lifetime issues, and was effectively be experiencing chicken torture. There's nothing about that you would strike you as man, maybe I want to wait until I get to the vegan section. Nothing about that would do that for you? No. If you were conscious about it? Nothing? What do you think that?
I don't mean nothing. It's, I think that from experience. I've thought about these things, including, when making decisions. Not very much. As I said earlier, it's not something that normally crosses my mind. But it has, And I've considered it in the same way that we're considering it now.
How do you think that if it was anything that you considered more frequently, that it might impact your decision? If it wasn't the case that you're just doing it when you're buying it, but also it's the case you're doing it every time you get down to eat it, while you're cooking it.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have some impact, right? At least,
would it be enough to flip you?
I don't think it would be enough to flip me, but it would probably lead me to somewhat reduced consumption. I'm not sure
somewhat reduced. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think a huge reduction, but I think it would be somewhat because I'm like anyone. or just about anyone, somewhat influenced by these sort of thoughts and experiences and emotional responses and so on in this way.
So I mean, some reduction that would at least, I think that'd be at least something positive. Let's try to think.
Yeah, what you could suggest is that, like, well, now I should be doing that every time just to try to reduce that consumption.
Oh no.
You don't want me to do that, but
yeah, I want you. That's correct. Yeah, I know you're not motivated to. I want you to. Yeah, that's the distinction. Right. With your, I don't know, what's your favorite part of the chicken?
I guess thigh.
The thigh. The thighs is pretty close to the shit covered force, I think. The thighs they're down there. Have you seen the chickens that are unable to walk because of the condition? Like the ones that are they're kind of like limping around. Yeah.
Yep. Like they got like a broken wing, and then maybe they got like, or they're just they're too tightly packed, or they're just deformed. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, exactly. Like they'll be walking around struggling. Like, I mean, that sounds kind of miserable, I think. I mean, if I was eating a thigh and like imagining at the same time that was happening, that would, I think, displease me. I don't know. What about you? Would that displease you?
Well, again, slightly, yeah, but not. I think not nearly to the degree to which it would displease you. And like,
no, of course.
I think. I mean, I had a similar. I think when I had this conversation, or not exactly this conversation, because we didn't really go this far. When I had this sort of conversation with Ask Yourself about this a couple of years ago or whatever, and I was saying some of the same things. He was one thing he remarked is just like he was sort of disappointed that I didn't have the same, or at least approximately the same sort of responses to these things that he did. And to that I can say, okay, I understand. I guess I understand your disappointment. There's things that I care about that I would be disappointed if other people had sort of starkly different preferences about. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that's where I'm at. I think I'm accurately reporting where I'm at.
No, I don't disagree that that's where you're at. I mean, yeah, it's like the average person has like wildly different dispositions than you, but it's like, I don't think you're wrong in saying those are your dispositions. You don't seem like you're being dishonest with me. That's why, I mean, other than the thighs, is there like a second favorite part of the chicken you like? Or is that like your favorite? That's just like it. Or there's no second?
Look, I don't know. Maybe. I guess I'm a chicken wing fan.
Chicken wing? You know what? I remember chicken wing. I think the chicken wing is kind of like a lot of the same things with thighs. I'm sure we can imagine in the situation that chicken is like we've seen the chickens with the broken wings. We've seen how like miserable it looks. They're less close to the shit though. Right? Like they're like not touching the shit.
Well, I mean, in the same way that the feet are, but they're still more. They're fairly exterior.
They're pretty exterior. They are pretty exterior. I mean, how often do you think that the wings come into contact with things that are kind of like disgusting and like repulsive and repugnant? Probably frequently, I'm guessing.
With like, yeah, probably frequently.
Yeah, I mean, all I can imagine doing is keep going through cases and trying to just like draw an association between the parts of the chicken and these other things, so that maybe there's like a higher increased chance. I don't think I'm gonna like change your mind or something. I don't know, maybe there's like some amount of like extra distaste.
Is the exercise here trying to get me to associate particular cuts with parts of the chicken as it's in that environment? Just to
have a more strong association between these things and those things, to maybe like hopefully have the impact of reducing the amount that you can. I don't think I'm gonna be able to like, compel you.
That's I sort of that's fine. I don't mind you doing that. Of course, I think I'm sort of at a point of reflection on this where it's that sort of thing isn't going to make much of a difference. Of course, maybe it could. I don't know, but
I mean, even people who reflect a lot about an issue, like associations, can still be built up. So like a lot of it ends up happening kind of without thinking too much about it, right? It's just like an intuitive kind of thing. But I don't know. You probably don't dispute that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, that's all I could do. That's all I could imagine doing is just like going through different, just like trying to build up a more and more and robust association. Like clearly, like you don't have like a common disposition. So that's the only way I could imagine going at this.
I don't have a common. You think I have a very uncommon disposition regarding these things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The average person, like, they're like more empathetic to animals than I am by a long shot. I think Pew Research has been polling on this. Like, it's like 30 or 40% of people think that animals should have the same rights as humans. People are just really, they're kind of just like totally out of the loop. I mean, they see those like you've seen like the grass-fed stuff and like the cows that have like the little containers with the happy cows on them inside. Like, they're just like uninformed on the states of the fact of the matter. And usually the like hardcore denial.
It'd be interesting to see what the because I'm not. I mean, obviously it's true that most people are significantly uninformed on these issues, but like it'd be interesting to see. This has probably been done. What the sort of trends or responses are to people as they become informed. You know, what do they? Uh-huh. I wouldn't be surprised if they're well, much more animal friendly maybe than the stuff that I've said or would say. But I don't know, is it like very significantly towards the kind of vegan friendly side, you know?
Sorry, what was the last part of the sentence? I wasn't able to understand what you said there at the end.
Is it very much, I'm saying, I would grant that of course it's probably, I would expect it to be much not as quote unquote extreme as maybe some of the things that I would say, but is it far in the other direction? Like, what do you say, it's people have these...
Oh no, yeah, they're fucking insane. Yeah. Holy shit! Like, people are insane when you poll them about how they feel about animal rights. They're the view that
I was specifically asking in cases where they've become informed about like animal agriculture.
I'm not sure if we have data on that, but that would be great to study. I think that would be really interesting to see what the results. Like, I mean, I can imagine like people go from animals should have the same rights as humans to like, okay, I'm super desensitized now and I just don't care. And I can imagine that being like a thing that happens. It just seems like most people, I would make a strong guess, would just be shocked, right? And then they just run to like the normal argument that I think from first-hand experience I usually hear when people hear like the states of the facts of the matter about the case, right? They'll just run to like, oh, I think that like the animals that I eat are different, right? I don't eat, that's like rare. That doesn't happen everywhere. And then you're like, nope, actually it's like vast majority are cases like this. And they'll be like, oh, well, like I can just like buy from, I buy grass-fed, so mine's different. And it's like, nope, actually turns out grass-fed is just as bad, right? They go to the cope response, I think is what most people would do. They just making a new wrong assumption on the empiric.
I buy organic, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know some people will say things like, I buy from like smaller farms or local farms that I know or whatever, and that's okay. You might think that that's somewhat better, but still, I mean, you're still going to object to that, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even buying from smaller farms, I think generally is probably pretty issuesome. But it's a lot better than factory farm. Like, I mean, if somebody hunts, I don't give a fuck about that. Like, if they were hunting, I wouldn't care.
Oh, you don't have issues with people like hunting for food?
No. Well, I mean, there are two issues I could imagine having with it, but like in the case of deer, they're overpopulated, so I don't have it there. And in the case of like auto-ordered predators, I think it's good to kill them. So I don't have it in those cases.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's, but even when someone were to bring it to this point, that's like, well, yeah, but in that case, like you're causing some suffering and ending the life of this animal. Like,
I think you're preventing it from having suffering.
Yeah. Okay. So, right. Well,
like they have really.
I could say about this.
Maybe, yeah, and they have pretty miserable lives, right? Like if I was in their position, I'd rather somebody like, instead of being ripped apart by a predator or like dying of starvation, I'd rather somebody just fucking shoot me.
Yeah, but okay, but just take I don't know, some deer on average and think about, okay, if you've randomly selected a deer from, I don't know, some region, how much longer would you expect it to live a sort of reasonably okay life if it's not targeted? And how much would you expect it to live? Well, I don't know. I know that there are some vegans who would say things like, it's even if it would have otherwise lived a not so great life, you still shouldn't, do that. But I don't know.
It depends on the
preferences for that.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the quality. I think if it was like the average deers, I think that if we select any random deer, my priors on that deer is having a life which is so bad that it's not even worth continuing. Like I would rather just be shot if I was in that deer's position. But like if it was just I don't know, we can imagine like other animals that are like not overpopulated. The chance of them like going hungry and like starving to death is relatively low. There's like, I mean, deers are not too extreme in terms of having a bunch of predators around that rip them apart or whatever. But if we can imagine an animal that's got like no natural predators, right? It's like a herbivore with no natural predators. That animal, I think it'd probably be like, just probably having a fine life. Like
some wild boar or something or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So you think it would not be fun to kill that?
No, I would have an issue with that. It just feels so like needless, right? Like needlessly cruel. Like just let it live. It's having a good time. It's not doing anything to anyone.
Yeah, I wonder if does this extend to humans as well? Like if there's humans that are having a really painful life.
I'll extend it to me. If I was having a life that was so bad that if I had my like faculties about me, I'd be like, yeah, I'd rather die than continue living, right? Then I think, yeah, like fucking just kill me, Jesus. If I could
choice for someone else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if a person who's unable to make decisions, right? If we imagine a person who's like they can't like deliberate or communicate their preferences, but for some other reason we got like a magic machine that shows they're just like being fucking tortured. It's like Guantanamo Bay for them every day. Like they feel they're constantly undergoing this miserable amount of suffering. But I'd be like, yeah, Jesus, just put them out of their misery. Or if it was like if I could imagine that like all of the people in Guantanamo were like stuck there forever and there's no way that they're getting out, then yeah, I'd probably good to just not let them experience what they have to. Like the Abu Ghraib victims or something.
Right, that seems reasonable. I think I would say something similar. I don't know. I was just wondering what your preferences were on that. I don't know if you want to continue talking about that or.
I'm cool with talking about it. It seems like on that one. I don't know, maybe there are interesting lines there, but yeah, we probably would agree. I think that's like what most people would say if they thought about the subject. I think they would say initially they would disagree with it. But I think after enough thinking about it, I think most people would come to that conclusion. Because I think most people are going to have a bias. Yeah, in the human case. Yeah, in the animal case, they'd all probably agree. Or not all, right? That's wildly exaggerated. But like the majority of people would probably just agree. In the human case, yeah, I think the holdup people would have is it seems like I think most people have this strong bias against killing if the other person is explicitly asked. But if they ask, I think they'd be like, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, but the only thing asking tells me is that they're having such a bad experience that it's like that if they were that rationally they're going to be wanting to die. If they ask in other situations where I think they're like kind of their wits aren't about them or they're like like a mentally ill person, I'd be like, no, that person is probably just mistaken. That person might very well be mistaken, so I probably wouldn't kill that person. Unless there's like other evidence there.
Yeah, it just gets to the I guess the difficult or more difficult case here, or more controversial case maybe, is the one where maybe they would express that thought that they want to die or something, but they are incapable of doing so or something, and then we're making that choice for them. I think I'd probably agree with the stuff that you said. Of course, we can make the cases more gray and vary them in certain ways and so on, but broad brushstrokes, I think we're on the same page. I think probably most people would be, but I don't know. But then there's people that have, for some reason, just staunch opposition to any sort of assisted suicide or anything like that, let alone the case where they haven't expressed the desire, but they're in the sort of state where if they could, they would. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that maybe the arguments I could imagine somebody who opposes that giving. I don't think they'd be super compelling, but maybe I could imagine somebody who's just like. Can imagine somebody just like revolt, like they just have like a revulsion towards the idea of killing somebody who hasn't explicitly consented. Because obviously in some cases that's going to be cases where a person would be experiencing so much that like if I was in their shoes I'd kill myself. And then the other one maybe is like, maybe it's the case that they make some argument that's not really directly pushing back on it, but instead is more like something like, yeah, maybe it's the case that these people are having, in some cases, lives that are so bad that they're not worth living. But we should err so much on the side of caution that we should basically universally never euthanize these people. And that seems unlikely, but I could imagine that being true.
Yeah, I mean, okay, if someone's making some sort of epistemic point, or like, well, the chance that they actually do want to continue, or like despite what it appears, or that they would, in the future want to continue despite what it appears, would always, warrant not carrying out the action. Well, I mean, it just seems so obvious that we can. There's at least some cases in principle where it's just like, that's not a serious enough concern to not to carry out that action. Of course, different people are going to have different sort of places where they draw their line, so to speak, of how much evidence they need and how severe the situation they appear to be in before they take the sort of action. But I don't know, there being some line there, or being some cases where we would generally prefer to take this sort of action seems pretty reasonable.
I could imagine somebody with a view who thinks that maybe they think that like the only negative value of suffering is some kind of like instrumental value, and that could be a view that's like not too crazy on face value. But I think that I don't know. I don't think I'd land on that person's. It seems like there is something bad in and of itself about suffering. And what I mean by that is like, it seems like it feels bad to suffer. So yeah, I can imagine somebody with some alternatives, but I don't think I'd find any of them super compelling either. Yeah. You guys playing Letter League? Oh shit, let me join in. See what's going on in this.
I'm playing chess, but chess one.
I'm super mid at chess, so I'm not very good. Seems like an interesting hobby though.